Hello everyone and a very good afternoon to you all. As the co-convener of this meeting, I'd like to thank you all so much for turning up here in such amazing numbers and showing your support to us. Thank you, Dr. Jalali, for that effusive introduction. Sir has been my teacher when I was training at Tata Memorial Hospital as well, and I think it's my privilege to be working at Apollo Proton Cancer Centre under his leadership currently. So the talk is titled A Surgeon's Journey. It was supposed to be a woman surgeon's journey. So this is my journey, it's my personal story. So without further ado, I'd like to begin. So as a child growing up, for as far back as I can remember, I had always wanted to become a doctor. In fact, I recall very clearly an assignment in class 4 where we had to write down on a piece of paper what we wanted to become. And I wrote cardiologist. But that wasn't my choice, to be honest. It was my father's, which he had imprinted onto me during our daily walks. But I was taught growing up that education was the most important ingredient to ensure one's success. And that entering the medical field was the ideal. I mean, this is supposed to be the most noble profession after all, and the most respectable. So that was the family plan, that I, the eldest, become a cardiologist. But the younger son, he ought to become a cardiothoracic surgeon. Of course, I, being the ever-obedient daughter, unaccustomed to thinking for myself, never questioned the grand family plan and entered the course, clueless as to what it would entail, with the sole aim that I had to graduate and I had to end up being a talented and a successful cardiologist. And fortunately for me, I loved biology, thank God, and had a natural flair for it. My younger brother, on the other hand, true to form, he threw a spanner in the works of my father's grand family plan, and he announced that he wanted to change over from biology to computer science. So that left me to ensure that Dad's dream came true. For most of my formative years, my parents would choose for me what I should wear, whom I should talk to, how I ought to behave, and what I ought to be when I grow up. But that began to change as I fumbled through life during my late awkward teenage years through the hospital corridors of an Indian medical college. And that's when I awakened to the fact that I indeed had a personality of my own. I had my own likes and dislikes. But most importantly, that I had the power of choice. And that was when I realized, as interesting as general medicine was, I wasn't too keen on it. And I found the prospect of reading an ECG most painful. But surgery now, on the other hand, that seemed like an attractive prospect. And having said that, while it was my father's dream to see his daughter become a doctor, it was my dream to become a surgeon. And full credit to my loving, overbearing parents that for a change, they did not question my decision. In fact, they had my back with full force throughout the challenging ride, even to this day, which is like a good 20-25 years later, never once doubting my decision or attempting to change my mind. And you'll understand in a few minutes why I call this journey challenging. So when did I fall in love with surgery? I fell in love during our clinical postings and rounds as we poked and prodded patients. We excised mucky slough and cleaned and dressed wounds and elicited McBurney point tenderness to diagnose acute appendicitis. I fell in love while standing at the ends of retractors next to our godlike surgeons who would be donned in cool-looking OT garb. And we vibed to the beats of the adrenaline surge in the theater as blood hit the roof and guts spilt onto the floor. It was beautiful. And our surgeons' arms deep into the patient's abdomens, directing this whole action-packed movie while making split-second life-saving decisions. I fell in love with surgery when I realized that it was elementary, it was common sense. You find a problem, you fix it. There's a block, you release it or you bypass it. There's something rotten, you cut it off. Something's torn, you stitch it. And something's broken, you repair it. We shape, we mold, we hammer, we break, we join, we stitch. And I realized then, and what I repeat to this day, much to the amusement of my non-medical friends, that we surgeons are the plumbers, we're the carpenters, tailors, and occasionally the butchers of the medical world. And so without warning, I fell head over heels in love with something that my parents had not chosen for me. But that's the thing about love, isn't it? It's unpredictable. One never knows when it's coming. It creeps up on you stealthily, hitting you with the full force of a bullet train before engulfing you in its passionate embrace and then leaving you reeling. And that's how it was for me, surgery and me. And we are blinded to our lovers' faults, aren't we? The trials and tribulations that one must endure to make this relationship work, notwithstanding. And so it was for me. But just love is not enough. That's when the actual story begins. For starters, when a woman chooses to pursue surgery, these are some of the things that she might hear that I heard. Are you sure OBG or pediatrics may be a better choice? How will you balance your career as a surgeon and home? And how will you make time for your children? When will you have children? Many variations of the above, basically, you get the drift. But the highlight here is that traditionally women have been discouraged from taking up a surgical career because of patriarchal societal perceptions and pre-existing gender stereotypes, holding the woman responsible for household chores and childcare responsibilities. Surprisingly, and this is very interesting, the first record of a woman associated with surgery dates back to 3500 BCE when Queen Shubad of Ur, she demonstrated a remarkable commitment towards her patient's care, and she wanted to be buried with her surgical instruments so that she may continue the surgical practice in the afterlife. But the Middle Ages were a particularly disappointing time for the progress of science in general, and more so for women, since they were barred from practicing surgery. In fact, in the 14th century, King Henry VIII was quoted as saying, "No carpenter, smith, weaver, or woman shall practice surgery." Now, historically, the general perception of a surgeon is associated with showmanship, strength, stamina, aggression, and intense competition. And adopting a surgical lifestyle was thought to be incompatible with starting a family. The first women surgeons to break this mold would definitely not have had it easy. But they made it easier for people like me to do what I love, so respect. Have you heard of the truly inspiring story of Dr. James Barry? So this gentleman was a very talented and passionate US military surgeon, and he performed the first C-section, one of the first C-sections at that time for a very wealthy individual. But it was found upon his death that Dr. James Barry was in fact a woman, Margaret Ann Bulkley, who pretended to be a man all throughout her life just so that she could practice surgery. But mind you, she did not do it in order to rebel or fight against the system. She did it because she wanted to do what she loved. And today, we're lucky to have so many women role models to emulate, be it Dr. T.S. Kanaka, who was the first Indian women neurosurgeon, or Dr. Ramesh Sareen, our very own senior surgical oncologist from the Apollo ecosystem, and so many other women and surgeons. In fact, my friends, Dr. Priya, Dr. Asha, there's Dr. Divya, so many of you all. So very, very inspiring, and they've made the journey so much easier for us. I must credit my teacher here, my mentor, Dr. Rajesh Ballal, a very discerning surgeon and a gentleman of dry wit. When I asked him if I was making the right choice by aiming to become a surgeon, he imparted me some very practical advice. What he told me was, "Manjula, you remember, take up what you want, but life and career must go hand in hand." What he basically meant was, because he said this in front of my mum, What he meant was, don't give your parents grief and stay single just in order to operate. Please get married. Please have children. Operate, but don't put the rest of your life on hold. Now, it is known that the socio-cultural fabric of our society demotivates women from entering this male-dominated bastion by overemphasizing their familial, reproductive, and domestic responsibilities. And this is something that I have witnessed personally, not just in medicine, but the other fields as well, that women often run double shifts every single day, one at her workplace and one at home. And moreover, this 10 to 14-year timeline for medical education, it coincides with their peak biological clock. So this may lead to women falling behind the pipeline in terms of their career advancement opportunities, further widening of a pre-existing gender pay gap, and either not being considered or not having the enthusiasm to apply for leadership roles. An article in the Times of India noted that it is almost impossible to find female head of the departments in the surgical fields apart from obstetrics and gynecology, and that women surgeons are a vanishing tribe. And this was in 2016. Well, I always knew that a marriage arranged by my parents was what was expected of me. So after a few nail-biting years, for my mum, not for me, of searching for the right boy and much horoscope matching, I got married in the final year of my post-graduation, 3 months before my final exams, with my thesis submission and a scientific publication due. Soon after that, I moved to Mumbai because my husband was there and I had to start afresh. And I believe, and I'm so grateful, that I think the universe took the steering wheel in his hands at that point in time, getting me a job in surgical oncology at the Hinduja Hospital. In a couple of months, I was offered a fellowship in breast oncology, and I'd like to say, as you know, the rest is history. But as the saying goes, a doctor is a student till he dies. And true to form, I joined yet another fellowship after that at the prestigious Tata Memorial Hospital 3 years into my marriage. And then a couple of years later, and you know, working at Tata, it's a very intense, grueling sort of regimen that we all have. But then, that's when my mentor's advice rang loudly in my ears. And my husband and I, we decided that we ought to start a family since I had crossed the 3-0 mark. Well, I was enthused to continue working and operating until the very last day of my gestation. You know, I shouldn't have a gap. But fate had other plans in store. So one complication after another put my fetus and me at very, very high risk, and I was put under strict bed rest for 8 months. And I was super stressed because the only thing I was thinking of at that point is, oh my God, yet another career gap, and you know, where will I be after this? Would this set me back? And then came another twist. So I was planning to, you know, finish everything, have my baby, and hopefully get back to working at Tata. But then my husband got a favorable job opportunity in Chennai, and we were expected to move here, so we all we were uprooted from Bombay, and we moved here, back to square one. Now, organ-specific oncology practice was yet to take on in the city, and I wondered how I'd find a job here as a pure breast surgeon amongst the sea of aggressively competitive surgical oncologists. And, of course, childcare. So my blessed parents came to my aid a year later, helping me with childcare, which allowed me to attempt to get back into the workforce, and that's when I joined the Adyar Cancer Institute as an assistant professor in breast surgical oncology. Now, oft quoted, again, the best doctor never stops learning. So I entered super specialization in breast oncoplasty, which is a surgical technique that has revolutionized breast cancer surgery by allowing us to save women's breasts. So you don't have to remove the breast of someone who's affected with breast cancer. And this was when I transitioned from Adyar Cancer Institute into Apollo, and that's when my daughter was entering preschool. And she's turned 7 now. I still work 9 to 14-hour days. But again, learning never stops. So I did yet another training program in minimally invasive breast surgery. And excuse me, but I'm going to blow my own trumpet here. And I'm so proud to announce that I've successfully performed the first endoscopic nipple-sparing mastectomy in India and South Asia early this year. You know, blowing one's trumpet is exhausting work, so moving on very quickly. The point that I'm trying to make here is that life and career can go hand in hand. And what I took as, I understood from my mentor, Dr. Ballala's very confusing advice, it started to make sense, and I think I imparted it at every step of my journey. Please remember that you don't have to do it alone. It may take a village, and that's okay. It is okay to delegate. It does not make you any less. All that matters is that one sticks to her guns. Remember, she believed she could, and so she did. The Association of Surgeons of India has 32,000 members, of which only 12% are women, and this is the scenario not just in India, but also in the West. From my batch of 100 students in MBBS, I'm the only women surgeon, though there were many who were passionate about surgery. From my junior batch, 1. From my immediate senior batch, none. In addition to gender-based prejudices, there are many other well-known challenges that women surgeons face during their training period and later on as they enter consultancy, and deter them for progress and in some cases cause them to drop out. While women surgeons have continued to face hurdles aplenty over the years all over the world, yet there are those who have paved a way for us through the marsh, and this cloud too has a silver lining. The issues are being recognized and being addressed by multiple fora. We have meetings such as this, so many of these happening, generating awareness and trying to change perceptions. Many women surgeons worldwide are now joining hands and stepping up to offer mentorship to younger aspirants. So though the statistics appear dismal and the picture appears even more so, the graph is showing a slow rising curve. So to all the women in surgery out there, or those of you who are interested in pursuing it, your surgical dream, please don't give up, no matter how high the tide. If I can do it, if my colleagues, Dr. Pavitra, Dr. Divya, Dr. Asha, and if Dr. Indira did it way back when, the mountain seemed unsurmountable, then every single woman out here and out there can do it. So remember, it's the person who holds the scalpel in hand is the surgeon, gender regardless. Thank you very much.